What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are actually going to continue our coverage over the Squadron Supreme from the early 2000s. Now, if you're new to my channel, you're wondering why I said the early 2000s. Let me explain. So back in the 1960s, Marvel had this idea where they wanted to have the Avengers fight against the Justice League. Unfortunately, though, Marvel couldn't use the characters from DC Comics because DC owned the rights to those characters. And so Marvel had to make a bunch of characters to represent those characters in their own comics. So, for example, Hyperion is Superman, Blur is Flash, Nighthawk is Batman. Now, with that being said, once they were able to create all these different characters and make a team, they called that team the Squadron Supreme. And so they now had a way to have the Avengers fight against the Justice League without actually using the Justice League. Now, with that being said, they also said that the Squadron Supreme came from a different universe in Marvel's multiverse. And so every once in a while, we would see the Avengers fight against the Squadron Supreme. Now, over the years in Marvel Comics, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, we would see different versions of the Squadron Supreme. And so we never really had the same version all the time. We had different versions of the team to show what it would be like to fight a different Superman, a different Flash, or a different Batman. And so Marvel used that way to say, hey, the multiverse is big, and there's so many different versions of all of our characters. Now, in the early 2000s, you had Marvel actually launch Marvel Max. Now, when it came to Marvel Max, it was technically made for adults. Now, with that being said, when it came to the Squadron Supreme, Marvel realized that they wanted to rework the origin of the characters on the Squadron Supreme. So a better origin for Hyperion, Nighthawk, Blur, Zarda, and the list goes on. And so they launched Supreme Power. Now, when it came to Supreme Power, it was actually written by JMS, the same man who was actually working on Spider-Man in the early 2000s as well. Either way, when it came to Supreme Power, it was used as a way to explore the origin of certain characters in this universe that's going to form the Squadron Supreme. It was an updated version. Now, once Supreme Power was technically canceled, you did have other books that tie into that same universe as a way to continue to tell stories about that universe. It was a great idea. Now, once all the stories were told about that universe, Marvel said that was just another universe or another version of the Squadron Supreme. And so that origin is only for them, meaning that if Marvel ever wants to give us another Hyperion, that Hyperion could have a different origin than the one we have in the early 2000s Supreme Power series. Now, like I said, though, after Supreme Power had ended, you did have other books come out after it to continue to tell stories about that universe. And we cover some of them. We cover the Nighthawk series, we covered the Hyperion series, even covered Dr. Spectrum. But now we're going to cover Hyperion versus Nighthawk. Now, a name like that right there, you already know that it's technically Batman versus Superman. But of course, Marvel can't say that. And so they're calling it Hyperion versus Nighthawk because those two characters represent Batman and Superman in this universe. Either way, though, these two characters right here, it was bound to happen sooner or later where Nighthawk is going to fight against Hyperion. And the reason why I say that, because if you saw our earlier videos, we found out that Nighthawk does not like Hyperion at all. Now, the main reason why, because Hyperion is white. But on top of that, he hates the idea that Hyperion has the power to technically save the Earth, but he's working for the American military. He's technically their attack dog. And so for Nighthawk, he hates the idea of Hyperion. And so they had some other problems in our earlier videos, and all those different kinds of problems led us to this moment right here, where these two characters are going to fight against each other. But of course, there is another reason why these two characters have to fight against each other. And so getting into today's video, we actually do pick up one day before the present day. And when we do, we actually pick up in the country known as Sudan. And we actually pick up with a refugee camp. Now with this camp, it does seem to be a normal night. Everybody is relaxing, everything is okay. Except that is the moment you have someone call out Janjaweed. Now when they say that, that right there means a group of people are on their way to do something to this camp. And actually, they do. This camp is attacked by a group called Janjaweed. Now, the Janjaweed group is going to be very important for this entire storyline. But right now, we're watching them technically burn down this entire village and also doing some more horrible things that I'm not going to show on the screen. But you have to remember, this is a Marvel Max series, so it does get very dark. But then we jump 4 weeks ago, and when we do, we actually do pick up with Nighthawk fighting against Hyperion. Now, we have no idea why in the world these two characters are fighting against each other, but they are fighting at the base for the Squadron Supreme. Now, it seems like Nighthawk broke into this place because we have to remember that Nighthawk was offered to actually join the team by Blur, but he did tell Blur that he did not want to join the team, which means that he is technically breaking into this place, but for unknown reasons. And so apparently he was caught by Hyperion and he's trying to escape, but it's really more of a regular day man trying to fight against a superpower alien being who has all the powers to technically destroy the Earth. And so right now, it's not a fair fight. You have Hyperion just beating down Nighthawk, and we're left to believe that Nighthawk had actually failed against fighting against Hyperion. Now that is the moment where we actually jump over to the Pentagon. Now when we do, we kind of find out that we do have a bunch of high priority people right now in the Pentagon talking about what happened in Sudan. Now, this conversation actually takes place 6 days prior from the present day. So we're still in the past, but it takes place after Hyperion and Nighthawk have fought, but before that camp we saw at the very beginning of the storyline getting attacked. And so right now, apparently you have these people in the Pentagon saying that apparently there is some new kind of mercenary. Now, when it comes to this mercenary, he is actually attacking all the different groups right now who are fighting in Sudan. Because right now you have so many different groups in Sudan who want to do something different for the country that right now they're fighting all over the country. But apparently this mercenary is attacking every single group, left and right, bam, 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 bam. And they have no idea why he's doing that. Because at first it may look like he did belong to one group, but now they're realizing this guy belongs to no group at all. So what's the point of him attacking all these different groups? Is he trying to make the conflict even worse between these groups? But when we jump into the next section, we kind of pick up in Sudan, but we're still 4 days in the past. But with this section right here, we do come to find out that apparently it was Nighthawk, the mercenary, who was going around attacking all these different groups in Sudan, trying to make the conflict between the groups even worse than it already was. But that is the moment where we actually do pick up with a character known as Tayer. Now, Tayer works for the military, and he came out here to see how bad was the conflicts between the different groups. And right now, he is currently meeting up with a tribal leader where his tribe was actually attacked by Nighthawk. Now, of course, we know that when it comes to Nighthawk right now, apparently, he's attacking different groups who want to do something different for the country of Sudan. And so when it comes to this tribal group, they're one of the many groups who are trying to do something different for the country. Now, you do have the tribal leader tell Tayer that it had to be an American who attacked their area. And the reason why, because he saw what the guy was using. American Jeep, American weapons, American armor. Everything looked American about him, which right now makes America looks bad. And so that is why Tayer is here to make sure that it was an American who actually attacked the country. Either way, he does hand Taylor a piece of metal. And when it comes to that metal, they have no idea what kind of metal it is or where the metal actually came from. And this piece of metal is going to be very, very crucial for this story. But then we jump back over to America. Now, when we actually jump back over to America, we do pick up with the general right now, General Alexander, meeting up with Hyperion. And the reason why, because his game plan is to actually send Hyperion into Sudan to figure out who is this American mercenary. Because right now, this American mercenary is attacking different groups in Sudan and causing more problems in Sudan. And so sooner or later, it's going to look bad on America that some random mercenary that is American is making things worse in another country. And so right now they want to send in Hyperion to find this mercenary and to stop him. Even though we know it is Nighthawk, they don't know that yet. Now you do have Hyperion wonder, why in the world should they go? Or should he go, sorry. And you have the general say, because of this right here. This piece of metal. And this metal, it comes from your spaceship. That right there is alarming, because how in the world did a piece of metal from my spaceship that we have at our base here was able to get over there to Sudan? And apparently the American mercenary had it on him. And so that is how you have Hyperion now going over to Sudan to figure out who is this American mercenary. And so we finally reach the present day. Now, when we do, we actually pick up right now with Hyperion arriving to Sudan. Now, when he does arrive to Sudan, this is him right now meeting up with Taylor. And when he does meet up with Taylor, is Taylor telling him what's happening right now in Sudan. That technically right now in Sudan, you have 4 different groups attacking one another. The government is one of them. Then you have 2 rebel groups as well who are trying to liberate Sudan. And the final group is a refugee group. And they came from another country. They are a completely different race. Now, here's the thing, though. That last group right there gets attacked the most. And the reason why? Because they are a different race than the people of Sudan. And so right now, this mercenary, he didn't attack here, but he did attack the other 3 groups, the rebel groups and the government. And so right now, you have so much conflict happening at the moment. Now, the camp that Hyperion's at right now is the same camp that was actually attacked at the very beginning of our video. And this was a refugee camp. And so once again, the 4th group is getting attacked the most, but you still have other fighting happening between the other 3 groups. Either way, it's Hyperion's goal to figure out who is this mercenary that is actually making things a whole lot worse. And so 1 hour after that conversation right there, you have Hyperion fly around Sudan to hopefully find the mercenary that comes from America, which of course is Nighthawk. And matter of fact, you have Hyperion being able to actually find Nighthawk. And when he does find Nighthawk, it's a very big moment, because now we're about to have round 2 between these 2 characters. Because you have to remember, they fought apparently 4 weeks ago, but we saw Hyperion beat down on Nighthawk. And so this time it could be the same thing unless Nighthawk came prepared. And this is another reason why I say Nighthawk is Batman in these comics. Because when it comes to Nighthawk, with prep time, he'll be able to actually handle a lot of different things, like Batman does with prep time. And so even though you have Hyperion right now just doing everything he can to get to Nighthawk, and you have Nighthawk right now doing everything he can to keep Hyperion away from him, once you have Hyperion being able to get close to Nighthawk, you have Nighthawk throw a couple punches, but the last one is actually very important because he does hit Nighthawk. You have Nighthawk hit Hyperion in the head. And when he does that, it's a huge moment. And the reason why, because Hyperion says, I felt that. Wait a second. You actually hurt me. But how? And then that is the moment you have Nighthawk say, yeah, I planned for that. And he literally punches Hyperion and knocks him out. Somehow Nighthawk got powers and being able to actually beat up now on Hyperion and actually hurt him. And so getting into the second chapter, it does pick up where the first chapter actually left off at, except it does focus more on what Nighthawk has to say about this situation. And apparently what Nighthawk is saying right now is that even though he's technically able to beat down on Hyperion, it still hurts him. And that right there is very, very crucial. And I want you guys to remember that right there, what he's telling us right now is actually very, very important. And so this begins the idea of us learning how in the world was he able to actually hurt Hyperion. But we have to jump back 3 months ago. And when we do, we kind of find out that apparently when it came to Kyle Richmond, who is Nighthawk, he's having a business meeting. Now, guys, remember, he is Batman of this universe, which means that he would have some kind of big company in Chicago like Batman does in Gotham City. Either way, right now, you do have Nighthawk or Kyle Richmond having a meeting about the idea that a chunk of money that he had given over to Sudan to actually help Sudan get better had just disappeared. That apparently the money went to the wrong group of people, and now it caused more problems out in Sudan rather than making things better. What he wanted to do originally with his money. And so right now is Kyle wondering how in the world is that even possible? Because they gave millions of dollars over to Sudan to help Sudan get better and deal with all the conflicts they have in their country. And now it seems like they have even more conflict thanks to his money. And so you do have one of his board members tell him, when it comes to other countries and their problems, a lot of times other countries just want to throw money at their problems, hoping that money is the way to actually solve these problems. But in reality, money is not the way to solve these problems. A lot of time, money continues the problems, or actually makes the problems even worse. And so even though what you're trying to do is a good thing, in reality, you just made it even worse. And so we then jump back right before we saw Hyperion and Nighthawk fought the first time at the military base that belongs to the Squadron Supreme. Because remember, in the earlier chapter of this video, we saw the first fight and we saw Nighthawk getting beat down by Hyperion because apparently Nighthawk was breaking into the military base, but we had no idea why he was breaking into the military base. And we kind of find out why here in this chapter right here, because apparently when it comes to Nighthawk, the reason why he was breaking into the military base is because of Emil Burbank. Now remember, Emil Burbank was a character who was kind of like the Lex Luthor of this universe, the Lex Luthor to Hyperion in some kind of way. Either way, when he came to Hyperion, when he arrived to Earth, let's not forget his spaceship had some kind of alien virus. It was an airborne virus, but it gave a lot of people around the world different abilities. Now, when it came to Emil, it made him very smart. But in earlier videos that we did, we saw the military ask Emil to work on different projects to bring down each member of the Squadron Supreme. Because just in case they turn evil, the American military needs something to actually stop them. Especially when it comes to Hyperion. And apparently Emil found a way to stop Hyperion and Nighthawk found out about it, and so that is why he broke into the military base to find what Emil had made to actually stop Hyperion. Now, of course, while he was trying to leave the military base, and of course, when he does run into Hyperion, it does lead into a fight between the two characters. Now, with that being said, though, we saw what happened earlier. It was Hyperion being able to beat down Nighthawk. But now with this section right here, we get more details of the fight. And matter of fact, we see that Nighthawk try to do different things as a way to hopefully get away from Hyperion. You know, at first he tries to fight him, which honestly is a bad idea. He then try to hit weak points, which again is a bad idea. and then he tries other methods to hopefully get away from Hyperion. But unfortunately for Nighthawk, when it comes to Hyperion, he is the Superman of this universe. He's not that easy to take down. But on top of that, guys, we have to remember when it came to Hyperion, he does not have a well-known weakness yet. We have not seen no kind of magical rock like kryptonite being able to bring him down. We haven't seen magic yet. And so honestly, we have no idea what Hyperion's weak to. But guys, we also have to remember that Nighthawk did take something that could technically hurt Hyperion, but apparently he can't use it right now. He wants to use it later on. And so while he tries to get away, apparently it does lead up to the moment where you have Hyperion about to punch Nighthawk, and we know it's going to hurt Nighthawk a lot. And so then we jump 10 days before the present day. And when we do, we actually do pick up right now with Nighthawk attacking this village. Now, this village is actually very important because it belonged to that tribal leader we saw earlier where he said that his village was attacked by an American mercenary. He had an American Jeep, American weapon. He also left behind a piece of metal. And he was right. It was American. It was Nighthawk. And this is the moment where he does attack the village. Now, the reason why Nighthawk did that is to get Hyperion's attention. And he knew how to get Hyperion's attention because he then plants the piece of metal that was found earlier right underneath the broken tank. It was the perfect way to bring Hyperion over to Sudan because with that piece of metal being found in a tank, of course, he'll believe, okay, I was attacked by an American mercenary who left this behind. And that will then get sent over to America to hopefully bring Hyperion to Sudan. And so then getting to the end of the second chapter, we actually do pick up with the same fight we saw at the end of the last chapter. The only difference is though this fight is now coming to us from Nighthawk's perspective. And this is going to be very important. And the reason why, because now you have Nighthawk telling us how it felt like fighting against Hyperion, or fighting against one of the four groups that belongs to Sudan right before Hyperion had appeared. But again, it's Nighthawk saying, I planned for all of this. I knew that sooner or later he would show up. And here he is right now. He showed up and this is perfect. Means my plan is coming together great. And then we actually see them fight once again. And we do see the same thing where we saw Nighthawk being able to actually hurt Hyperion, except this time we get a couple more pages to see the battle actually continue on. And with the battle being able to actually continue on, we actually do see that Nighthawk was able to shoot a fake gun. When I say a fake gun, I mean that he was able to take his hand and make it look like a gun, and he shoots it like he's actually shooting a real gun, and somehow he was able to still hurt Hyperion. And that right there is very, very crucial. And the reason why, because at first it really does look like somehow Nighthawk was able to use his hand as a imaginary gun and actually shoot Hyperion. But in reality, that is not the case. And you see what I mean as we go through this book, because honestly, it's a great idea. And so getting into the third chapter, we finally pick up after the fight we saw in the first two chapters, Nighthawk versus Hyperion. And we kind of find out that Nighthawk took Hyperion back to his secret base. Now, when Nighthawk did that, when you have Hyperion wake up, he realized that one, they're somewhere else, but two, he realized that he was knocked out for a good period of time. But now for Hyperion, he needs to figure out, how in the world did Nighthawk hurt me? Because Nighthawk was a man for a long period of time not having powers. And then out of nowhere, he has powers and he's able to actually hurt me. That's not cool. Now for Nighthawk, he knows that what Hyperion is trying to think about. Like, how in the world did he get powers? And so you have Nighthawk say, you're never going to figure it out. But either way right now, I brought you here. I plan to bring you here so that you'll help me out with some certain problems over here. Now for Hyperion, he honestly at first does not care about the idea of what's happening right now in Sudan. Matter of fact, he wants to kill Nighthawk because one, Nighthawk hurt him, and two, Nighthawk is a dangerous man if he does have powers now. And so this is Hyperion saying, I need to kill you off because now you might have powers, and that could be a problem. And you have Nighthawk say, see, I knew you were not ready just yet. And then you have Nighthawk knock out Hyperion once again. But then we pick up at a different location in Africa. Now, we have no idea where, but it does look like a secret base. Now, with that being said, though, we do pick up with a set of characters that we actually saw in the earlier parts of our coverage over the Squadron Supreme. Because right after our heroes came together and became a team, they went on a mission to another part in Africa. And of course, they were sent there by the American military to go after someone who was a power being, meaning that they had some kind of powers, and they were ruling that area of Africa. Now, of course, when the American military sent the Squadron Supreme over there, they thought our heroes would be able to actually handle that mission very easily. But of course, they couldn't and made things worse in that area in Africa. Now, these set characters right here, they came out of nowhere and told the Squadron Supreme to never come back to Africa, that America does not need to help out Africa at all. Because when it comes to America, America always makes things worse when it comes to helping out other countries, especially countries in Africa. And so right now, you actually have these set characters say, we are the protectors of Africa, and we do not need any help from anybody in America. And if you come here ever again, we will fight you and we will possibly kill you. And so when they saw Hyperion and Nighthawk fighting in Sudan, they were like, Hyperion knew the rule. We told him to stay away from Africa. And now he's back here. He just broke that rule. And so now we have to go and handle him. But getting back over to Hyperion and Nighthawk, this is the moment where you do actually have Nighthawk wake Hyperion back up. And when Hyperion wakes back up, it's Nighthawk telling him again, you are going to help me if you like it or not. If you say no again, we can literally keep doing this over and over and over again until you actually realize that you're going to help me. And so this is Hyperion saying, okay, let me help him out. If I do help him out, then I may figure out how in the world did Nighthawk get powers and how he's able to actually beat me over and over again. And that is the moment where we actually jump over to another rebel camp. Now, when we do, of course, we see that right now, the Janjaweed group is right now attacking this refugee group. And when they do, they're trying to kill off every single person who is a refugee. Now, that is the moment they are actually confronted by Hyperion. Now, with Hyperion being here, he is actually able to take out the entire Janjaweed group that came here to take down this refugee group. But while he's actually taking down people left and right, of course, that is the moment he realized that this is a huge problem here in Sudan, that right now innocent people like the refugees who are just trying to find a new country to live in are now being attacked in this new country just because of their race or where they actually came from. And so what he sees right now is war. And he realized when it comes to war, war is horrible. But also with war, there are so many different kinds of tools. And with those tools, they're just horrible things used as a way to win a war. And so this is Hyperion saying, I shouldn't care, but he realized he does care and he wants to help out Sudan so bad. But that is the moment where you do have Nighthawk appear. Now, when Nighthawk appears, it's really more of him saying, I know what you're thinking. I know that right now you're actually thinking about the idea of you want to help out this country. Because at first you don't want to care, but then you realize what's happening over here. Now you care. You're such an easy person to read. Now with Nighthawk saying that, he's really saying that he knows every single thing about Hyperion, how he feels, or how he's going to act over different kinds of situations. It's him saying, I know everything about you, Hyperion. Now, for Hyperion, he's still trying to figure out if Nighthawk has some kind of powers. But on top of that is him kind of figuring out, okay, if you do have powers, do you have the ability to be a telepath? And Nighthawk realizes or knows what Hyperion's thinking. He's like, dude, no, I'm not a telepath. Again, you're such an easy person to read. You're trying so hard to figure out how in the world I got powers and what my powers are. I knew you would think that I am some kind of telepath now, and I'm not. So let's move on to the next part of my plans. But then we jump over to another group of soldiers. Now, when we actually do, these soldiers right here, they actually work for the Sudan government. Either way right now, they're going after another group of people. Now, this could be a refugee group. Either way right now, they're being stopped by these soldiers and about to be arrested by these soldiers. And everything they have on them, food and supplies, they're going to take to their camp is about to be taken away by these soldiers who work for Sudan's government. Either way, that is the moment you have Hyperion step in, because with Hyperion stepping in, it's him realizing that he needs to care, because even the government is corrupted. Right now, the government is not even trying to help out their own people, but also going after other people who are just trying to find somewhere safe to live and sleep at for the night, or a different area in Sudan that's not so dangerous than the other areas. These are just refugees just trying to leave harsh areas. And of course, Sudan's government is making things even harder on them. Either way, you do have Hyperion stop these soldiers, and he asks them, who is your boss? Tell me your boss name and where I can find him, because this right here is messed up. You as the government should be helping out your people, and you are not. So tell me, where is your leader? And so that is the moment where we actually do see Hyperion go over to the capital. Now, when he does, we see him meet up with the president of Sudan, and that is President Omar. Now, this is where things get a tad bit crazy, because you have Hyperion tell us that when it comes to the president, he's one behind all the mess going on right now in Sudan, because what he's doing is he does use the soldiers as peacekeepers, but in reality, he used them as a way to collect supplies from refugees who are trying to leave the country or trying to find safe areas in the country. But on top of that, the rebel groups out there who are trying to liberate Sudan, they're also being used by Omar as a way to attack these refugee groups, because these refugees are using up a lot of resources. Food, clothes, water, and the list goes on and on. And so this is Omar saying, if these people do not want to stand with me, then they have to go. But they're not going to take supplies with them that belongs to the country. And so with that, all this conflict is because of this man right here. Now, you do have Hyperion wanting to kill him off, but he says, no, you have two options. Stop all this mess right now, or I'm going to bring in the UN. And of course, the UN is the United Nations. Now, for Omar, he does not care. And the reason why he doesn't care, because that is the moment you have Taylor walk in. And when Taylor walks in, you have Taylor say, listen, man, you have to listen. You can't kill him. And the reason why, because he gives us very important information. And with that information, we do learn a lot of different things about different targets that we are trying to take out. Targets who are technically terrorists to our country. And so that is why we cannot kill him off. Because if we do try to kill him off, we lose all that information we need to find these different people who are technically terrorists to America. And so that is why America doesn't want to kill off Omar, because he gives them information. And also, they pay him for that information. And so with them being paid for that information, they technically really cannot actually kill him off. But with that payment, he's giving that money over to the rebel groups so that they are able to get better supplies. And with better supplies, you're able to take out these refugee groups out very easy now. And so he's technically funding all the bad things happening right now in Sudan. And so you have Hyperion say, no, this makes no sense. Forget America and what they're trying to do. And so he goes ahead and snaps the neck of Omar. He says, no, this is all wrong. We can find our terrorists out in the world with our own resources and better ways than this right here, because America is actually making things worse. When you pay him, that money is going to those groups who are attacking innocent people. The conflict does not stop. It just keeps going on and on and on. And that right there is the main problem in this country. And so you have Hyperion leave and tells Taylor to go ahead and clean up the mess. And so to wrap up the third chapter, when you have Hyperion and Nighthawk trying to leave the capital, well, of course they cannot leave the capital. And the reason why? Because that is the moment they are actually confronted by the group of Africans who said all of Africa is protected by them. They don't want any kind of help from America at all. And so with Hyperion being here, they broke that rule because they told Hyperion, do not come back here, because if you do, we're going to kill you. And right now, they're here to kill Hyperion, because again, Africa is off limits to heroes of America. But getting into the final chapter, we actually do jump back to the moment where you had Nighthawk breaking into that military base that belongs to the Squadron Supreme. Because remember, he was trying to steal something from Emil Burbank's laboratory that was a way to actually stop Hyperion. And apparently, he did find something. And so when he found that item, he was on his way out there. And of course, get reminded, he was stopped by Hyperion on his way out. And remember, when it came to Hyperion, it led to their first battle. But every single time we jump to this section right here, we're left to believe that Hyperion was able to actually do something to Nighthawk. But we kind of find out he wasn't able to. Nighthawk was able to get away, which honestly makes sense because with this story, he had to get away. If Hyperion was able to punch Nighthawk, Nighthawk would be in the hospital for days on days. Either way, right now, you have Nighthawk saying that thanks to the alarms going off because something else was happening on the military base, I was actually able to escape and get away without Hyperion finding me a second time around, and get away with what I was looking for that could be used to actually stop Hyperion. Now, what he found in Emil Burbank's laboratory, he does take it over to a group of scientists who works for his company. Now, at first, you have Nighthawk try to just see if the item could actually work. And apparently it can work, but not this one right here. It has to be modified in a way to actually work on Hyperion. And so you have this scientist tell Kyle, hey man, give me 3 weeks and I'll be able to actually pull it off. And so this device, this weapon is the reason why Nighthawk is actually able to do some kind of damage to Hyperion. It's all coming together now. But then we jump back over to the moment where you actually had Nighthawk just defeat Hyperion in their second fight. And with them being able to actually knock out Hyperion, his goal was to take Hyperion back to his hideout in Sudan. But the problem was, while he was trying to carry Hyperion, or really drag Hyperion, that was the moment he was confronted by more men who work for the different groups in Sudan. And so right now, they're coming after Nighthawk because he's this American mercenary causing more problems in Sudan. But you had Nighthawk being able to take these guys down, but he uses guns. That right there is a red flag, because if you have powers and if you're able to actually stop Hyperion, why can't you use your powers on these soldiers right here? It just makes things 10 times crazier. And so now you're wondering, how in the world did he really take down Hyperion? What was in that device that made Hyperion so easy to take down? Because he had to use it on Hyperion as a way to actually defeat Hyperion. Either way, once Nighthawk is able to take these guys down, he then continues to drag Hyperion back to his hideout in Sudan. But do we pick up with the moment where you had Hyperion and Nighthawk work together? And of course, they were attacking one of the rebel groups. Now, while you had Hyperion go on a rampage and killing off most of the soldiers, you had Nighthawk go into the prison. And the reason why, because this group right here was locking up women who were technically sexually assaulted by a soldier. And the problem was, though, they had to go on trial to prove that they were actually assaulted. And in their country, apparently you have to have 4 men witnesses to say that you were actually assaulted if you want them to believe that you were actually assaulted, to show that you are innocent, not guilty. But the problem is, though, she's not going to find 4 men to say, yeah, she was assaulted. And so her trial's not fair, and she will be locked up down the road. And so you have Nighthawk go in this prison and kill off all the soldiers who were guarding this prison, and then let every single prisoner out, especially this one girl right here. And so it's kind of like, yeah, Nighthawk came here to fix the problems in Sudan, and he's trying his best by using Hyperion as well. And so that is the moment where we actually jump over to the present day, where you have Hyperion and Nighthawk fight against the African heroes. Now, while they're fighting against one another, you do have the African heroes actually point something out here. And what they said, that when it comes to Hyperion, when it comes to Nighthawk, their methods are not good methods at all to help out Sudan. That their methods in helping are actually making things worse in Sudan. And what they're trying to say is that if you're trying to actually help the country out, you can't just come here and just throw money at the country. Say, oh, here's some money. Here's this. Use the money as a way to make things better here. Because most likely the money you give is most likely going to make things even worse out here in the country. That money could be used to do more bad things in the country. And so the idea of giving money to a country as a way to help the country is honestly a bad idea. But then when it comes to Hyperion, who's all like, okay, we'll just kill off bad people. But then they said, you can do that, but there always will be someone who is going to replace the person that you had killed off. And most likely the new person coming in could be just as bad as the old person you took out. And so technically, both of your methods are not going to work. And matter of fact, both of your methods are going to make things even worse here in this country. That is why we say, leave us alone, because we have to find our own way to fix the problems in Africa. And right now, that's not you. You're just making things even worse. Do you understand that? And so you have Hyperion like, oh my God, she's right. Our methods are not going to work. And so he tells Nighthawk to stop. But for Nighthawk, he's kind of like, why? We can beat them and still help this country right after that. But it's Hyperion saying, no, what she said is true. Our methods, yours and mine, they're not going to work. Instead, they're going to make things even worse here. And we can't have that. And so you have Hyperion leave, and you have Nighthawk wonder, okay, I guess, do I stay here or go back to America now? And so to close on this video, we actually do find out how in the world Nighthawk was able to defeat Hyperion. And what we kind of find out is that when it comes to Nighthawk, the item he stole from Emil Burbank was actually an item that can make Hyperion think that he's actually being hurt. But on top of that, make him feel like he's being hurt. But in reality, he's not being hurt at all, and his body is not being damaged at all either. But his brain will think his body is being damaged. His brain will think that he's actually getting hurt. But in reality, he's not. And that was a clever way to actually find a way to hopefully defeat Hyperion down the road if he ever does become too powerful to be stopped. And so with that being said, it was a way for Emil to help out the military to find a way to stop Hyperion. And so now Nighthawk has a way to actually slow down Hyperion. Either way, this wraps up today's video. So with that being said, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.